Kevin Roth here of RotoGrinders, and today we're going to talk about the RG Discord. If you're not a member, you should be. It is a fantastic community and resource that RotoGrinders provides, and it's easy to join as well. All you have to do is click the Discord icon on RotoGrinders or go to rotogrinders.com/Discord. From there, you'll either sign up if you're new to RG, or if you're already a member, just click the link at the top to go to the sign-in page. Once you've logged into your RG account, you can be taken to Discord to log in there. Once you've connected those accounts, you won't have to leave the server. You can freely close out and reopen Discord without ever having to reconnect. The idea of Discord might be a little bit daunting to you, but it's actually pretty simple to navigate. Whether you're on mobile or desktop, the far left side will show you the Discord servers that you've already joined. Then next to that, you'll see the channels within that Discord. We have both free channels like Chiefs Prop Shop and our daily sport channels. And we also have premium channels like Blender's Game Theory or the Crunch Time channels. Premium members can see the difference between the free and premium channels by looking for a padlock icon next to the premium channel names. We also have a few pointers for new and experienced users alike. If you're having trouble finding a channel, make sure that you haven't collapsed the section that the channel is in. Collapsing a channel will only allow it to appear when there are unread messages in that channel. Also, we find that using the actual Discord program works better than opening it in a browser like Safari or Chrome. Lastly, if you're having trouble with one of our tools, your RotoGrinders account, or any other technical needs, you can hop in our feedback and help section of channels to get help from one of our wonderful support and moderation team members. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out on Twitter @RotoGrinders or email support@rotogrinders.com. See you in Discord.
Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday. It's Pie Day. And we got James McCool, as usual. McCool, Mondays with McCool. James McCool, the co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Give me those thumbs ups in the YouTube chat. I see you guys in there. Suki Singh, Matt Mears, Grant Brown. Good morning. Good morning, James. It's Pie Day. How do you celebrate Pie Day?
I don't know. I might have pie later. Maybe.
How many numbers of pie can you do by memory?
3.14, that's it.
Yeah, that's about it for me also. Pi, we could go, let's see. 3.14159265359, and that's all that Google gives me right now.
Yeah.
It never ends. It's like DFS. It never ends.
Never ends. And the longer term that you play Pi, the longer the I was trying to do an ROI joke there, but I got nothing.
You got nothing. You got nothing for pie. Well, I had some pie over the weekend.
Good.
Celebrated a bunch. It hit a MMA slate again. Finally, so I made 35,000 on Saturday. I don't know. You didn't? Were you even paying attention? No, of course.
No, of course I was. Of course I saw that you didn't. You get a live final seat too?
Yeah, well, it's not. Well, they're doing. Well, no, they are doing a final. Just it's series of rounds. So essentially, there's 70 final qualifiers. Then 70 in round one go down to 30. Then 30 in round two go down to 10, and those 10 then go to wherever it's to be determined.
I actually really like that format. I like that format a lot.
Well, I'd rather just go right away. I mean, that's me personally. People were shocked. Some people on Twitter were shocked. It's like, oh, I didn't know you. I thought you don't like live final qualifiers or what. I said, I don't mind taking shots. I'm not that much. I mean, I'm not like that nitty, but it's typically going to be number one overlay, which there wasn't. Or if it's in a spot that I think that I have considerable enough edge, and it's inexpensive. I mean, what I do in MMA is I typically play anywhere from 75 to 150 lineups for the large field GPP.
Yeah.
Of the 100K to first, if it's like a $15 entry and it's a large enough slate, like the Saturday was a 14 game slate, I'll play 150.
Yeah.
Like if it's a 11 fight slate and a $25 entry, maybe I'll only play 50 lineups, right? Because there's only so many ways to be unique. You can be, but you'll have a lot of high variance lineups.
Yeah.
And then I hand build 3 lineups, and I use that for smaller field stuff. So typically I would play the 555, the 200 3 max, the 100 single entry, and then mix in the 33. There's a $33 like 3 max. There's a $50 single entry. So I'll try to even it out so all 3 lineups have about the same amount of dollars down. Like the 555 lineup is obviously going to be a little bit higher. They ran the 555, but they also ran a $400 qualifier. So I played that instead. And then in all 3 lineups, I played the $20 qualifier. So it's like a 350 entry contest for $20 to qualify for this MMA championship. So what I do is those 3 lineups outside of the large field, like the largest field, I just enter those 3 in like literally like every contest in the lobby.
Yeah.
So if there's a secondary, like a 10, like I'm showing on the screen, the 10K, which was like it says the throwdown, but it's like the second contest because the first one filled. And then they have like the $8 hook for 5K to first. And it's like, okay, I'll $24 to all my 3 lineups in there. Then the $5 is like 5K to first. So I'll like 3 lineups into there. And then anytime I see like a $5 237 man single entry, I throw one of the lineups into there. I put it into like triple up, all 3 lineups into triple ups and quintuple ups. So like those are my 3 main lineups. And then I build a 150 set or whatever, set 50 to 150 set otherwise. So one of those 3 lineups that I hand built pretty much won every contest that it was in, right? With 589.32. And it actually had a losing fighter. Because the losing fighter put up like more points than half of the cheaper winning fighters, because it was one of those slates where the underdogs were not all that enticing, because we had all the 9K fighters were like minus 250 favorites. So this is the one guy. He was one of the more higher owned underdogs, but he smashed in the first round and then lost the next 2 rounds. So he still was able to get like 4 takedowns, 2 reversals, tons of control time. So 60, he actually scored. Semmelsberger was the winner, and Semmelsberger scored 62. Right. So the losing fighter actually scored more than the winning fighter on that slate. But the key to the slate was fading the highest owned favorite and fading the highest owned underdog.
Yeah.
The highest owned favorite was a $9,600 main event 5-round fighter, which I don't know. He was going to be it was 45% owned, but just because it's a 5-round fight doesn't mean anything. I mean, people overvalue the extra 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And Ankalaev pretty much only got 1 takedown, and it was like it was a very slow stand-up affair. So I was under on him. And then McKinney was wildly, I mean, he was like 41% owned. Yeah, in the large field, he was 44% owned as a $7,200 underdog, coming off of 2 first-round knockouts.
Okay.
Right. So like the scores, his game log looks great, and a massive step up in competition against Drew Dober. So people just like, it was hard to find underdogs you liked on this slate, and so many attracted to McKinney, and it almost killed me. Like I was barely, if I look at my exposures here, like I only had like 13% McKinney, because I had him as like the most over-owned underdog on the entire slate.
Yeah.
And I played a ton of Drew Dober, right? His opponent at 9,000 against him, because We talk about it in the course, James, right? Direct leverage.
Correct.
Right. If you want to fade a 41% owned underdog, if he fails, 41% of the lineups are dead to first place.
Yep.
But what correlates with him failing? Drew Dober winning and hopefully putting up a good enough score. And I almost got killed there because Terrence McKinney came out and within the first 90 seconds of the fight, knocked down Drew Dober twice. Right? Literally came out, need him in the face. That dropped him. Right? I think he got kneed in the face twice. Terrence McKinney almost put up 130 points within 90 seconds. And I'm watching that fight going, well, obviously I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right. I barely have any of the 44% owned underdog. And in either of my 3 single entry lineups, I didn't play him at all.
Right.
But of course, the number one concern, if you listen to the ground and pound here on RotoGrinders, is that McKinney's an unproven, unproven, but still a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Massive step up in competition. Drew Dober went 3 rounds with Islam Makhachev, who's de facto probably going to be the champion. And Drew Dober has never been finished in his entire career. Okay. So, and then McKinney, we've never seen past, he's had a grand total of like 2 minutes in the cage in the UFC.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's had like that. So it's like, people are going to overvalue that. It's like, who knows? If this gets past the first round, I don't know. What does McKinney have anything left? Well, he didn't even get to this. He didn't even get to the second round. McKinney, after he couldn't finish Drew Dober, essentially gassed out.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 3 minutes into the fight, after flurry or whatever, and down, and Drew Dober got up, and then basically McKinney was dead on his feet.
Yeah.
And then got clocked a couple of times, got knocked down, and that was it. Yeah, I think he was out on his feet. So it went from one side. So in the span of 2 minutes, Terrence McKinney scored 38 fantasy points, which is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a round for a wrestler.
Yeah.
Like that's like 6 takedowns and stuff. So some people on Twitter are like, you got lucky with that. It's like, well, no, that's why you play Drew Dober.
Yeah, who cares if you got lucky? You set yourself up in a position to where if you get lucky, you get paid a lot.
You get paid a lot, right? That's the whole point, right?
That's the entire point of DFS, man. People like, whenever somebody says, oh, well, this person got lucky, it's like, one, if it's a bad lineup and they got lucky, who cares? They still put together a lineup and got lucky and won. And that's what you are also trying to do. You're just trying to put together a lineup that has to get less lucky than they got. In order
and still make the same amount of money, though.
That's still make the same amount. Right. So it's just all about whenever somebody says, "Oh, well, how did you know to pick this player? How did you know to pick this player?" It's like I was just picking the one that would pay me the most if things went my way. That's all.
Right. Well, that's I was having a conversation with when Guido Canetti, the Chris Moutinho Guido Canetti fight. Canetti basically they stopped the fight with Moutinho on his feet because he wasn't even defending himself at some point. Canetti was 10% owned. He scored 101 points as a $7,600 underdog. And obviously you could see here, he's in my winning, single entry. If you took my lineup here, I have Dober, Maverick, Brundage, Canetti, Fletcher, Yadong, Yadong was a huge favorite over Moraes to probably knock him out in the first round. But like, it's like, oh, you got lucky with Canetti. It's like, it's not about what's most probable. It's about what's most profitable. So I take a look at my MMA odds sheet. So this is what I put together for MMA on every slate. So I put down all the fighters, all the salary. Then I put down the win odds, the money line odds for the win, for the inside the distance, and the round one. And I put the projections from 3 different sources in here as well, and the ownership from 3 different sources, and average that out. Okay. The most correlative metrics to 100+ point scores are inside the distance betting lines and round one finishing betting lines. Because obviously, if you win in round one, you're going to score at least 90 because that's the minimum you can. But fighters that score 100 points are more likely going to finish inside the distance than in a decision. Okay. So all I'm doing is comparing those lines linearly which isn't even the best way to do it, but linearly to the ownership. So Guido Canetti was plus 350 inside the distance, plus 650 in round 1. Okay. He finished in round 1. Okay. Plus 650 equates to an implied probability of 13%. Right? Well, he was 10% owned. So that's positive. Yes, it doesn't happen that often, but he's owned less than the probability of it happening. Right? Terrence McKinney, on the other hand, Terrence McKinney was a plus 155 money line underdog, right? Which is a 39% implied probability of winning, right? Now, winning doesn't mean you score 100 points, right? Just winning is winning. It could be any score. He was plus 220 inside the distance. So that's 31%. 450 in the first round. That's 18%. I had him, his aggregate at 32% owned. He came in at 41% owned.
So you would have had you said you had 13%, right?
I had I ended up exposed 13%. He was in every other contrarian line.
You would have had less if you'd have known that he was 44. You probably would.
Yes, I actually would have had less of him. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then Drew Dober, on the other hand, I had him as 20% owned. He came in at 18%. Of course, he's more expensive. He's 9,000. 42% inside the distance, 24% in round 1. So, like, I take a look here between Terrence McKinney and like someone like Guido Canetti, who's 400 more. It's like there's no reason why McKinney should be 41% owned and Canetti to be 10% owned. Based on the betting lines, what is the more likely scenario? McKinney wins via knockout or Canetti wins via knockout? McKinney, of course. But not 40. He's not worth 41%.
Right.
So it's not a matter of what's most probable. People go into MMA and they go, well, who's most probable to get a 100+ point score? Who's gonna, like Miranda Maverick I had in my winning lineup. Okay. And I had tons of her, 35% of her. I had 45% Carl Roberson, and he got killed in the first round. So like a lot of those lineups were dead. That's why my other 2 lineups out of those 3 that I hand built had Carl Roberson in it. So that's why those 2 lineups did not do well. But if we take a look here, Miranda Maverick was plus 255 inside the distance. She had one of the highest lowest inside the distance probabilities of any of the favorites on the slate. She was 9,400 because she was a huge favorite, minus 360 favorite over Sabina Mazo. Okay. For 200 more, you get Ankalaev, who's the main event favorite, who's going to be, I have him at 47% owned. Okay. His Ankalaev's win odds probability is 87%. His inside the distance probability is 48%. And his round 1 probability is 24%. Okay. Well, he's going to be 47% owned. Miranda Maverick is 78% chance to win, 28% inside the distance, and 17% in round 1. I had her at 17% owned. She came in at 17% owned. So Ankalaev is not twice as more likely, but I mean, probably 80% more likely to finish inside the distance. He is about 50% more likely to finish in the first round. Those are the 2 bare basic things that I use for the probability of 100+ point score. Okay. So for Ankalaev being 80% more likely to finish inside the distance and 50% more likely to win a round 1. Why is he 3 times more owned than Miranda Maverick? Ankalaev, if it was an efficient market, Ankalaev would be like 40-ish% owned, like 40, maybe 42% owned. And Miranda Maverick would be 26% owned. And then it'd be like, okay, because if I change that, for instance, if I look at that's what my rating score is. It's judging leverage. So I had Miranda Maverick as the highest probability of scoring 100+ points versus her ownership. But if I change her ownership, if I put, let's say 60 here, right, to make her ownership 32%, She would be the worst play on of all the 9K fighters, right? It's not a matter of what I think will happen, is that at 32% ownership, she doesn't finish enough time to warrant that ownership.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why her rating comes up higher. And that's why Ankalaev's wasn't, I had Maverick higher, Semmelsberg higher, Yadong the same for cheaper. I had Dober and Pereira similar for a much cheaper for 600, 700 less. So that's why I didn't play as much Ankalaev as other people. I mean, like all these guys, I mean, look at how big these favorites are. Like all I need is just a boring fight out of a 5-round fight.
Mm-hmm.
At 47%, he came in at 45% owned. McKinney came in at 41% owned. You know what the correlation between Ankalaev and McKinney is? Very high. You have the $9,600 favorite and a $7,200 underdog. If you're going to play a $9,600 favorite, you're probably going to need some cheap underdog. And pretty much everyone, you either played McKinney. McKinney came in at 41. Silva came in at 23, and Fletcher came in at 24. So there were a lot of Ankalaev McKinney lineups out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't McKinney, probably Silva or then Fletcher, right? But how many Maverick Fletcher lineups are there?
Right.
Not as many, right? You still need a cheap underdog though, right? So a lot of there are probably twice as many Maverick McKinney lineups because Maverick's still 9,400 and you need a cheap underdog. So if I'm going to play Maverick, maybe I want to play Fletcher instead to get even lower ownership. Mm-hmm. But if you're not playing Maverick or Ankalaev, you probably don't even have to play McKinney or Fletcher at all.
Right.
And then you should be using like the mid-range. That's why I had a lot of Trevin Jones. I had a lot of Guido Canetti. I had a lot of JJ Aldrich, right? A lot of people went to Damon Jackson. I had a whole bunch of the Roberson Roundtree fight. I was playing a lot of balanced type of lineups. But the question is in MMA, this is the main reason why I barely care about like analyzing fights in MMA. When the R squared of like the inside the distance to 100-point scores is 0.8,
mm-hmm.
Why do I care? Why do I care? Right. Now, obviously, I listen to the Ground and Pound, our MMA show. I read the expert survey here at RotoGrinders. And I'm like, oh, and also, obviously, I've been playing UFC for a year and a half. So I know a lot of these fighters anyway. I know that like Alex Pereira is a kickboxer. His minus 160 inside the distance, he's not wrestling to get a victory. He's going to knock someone out. While someone like Song Yadong, same thing. He's not a wrestler. Damon Jackson's a wrestler. AJ Fletcher's a wrestler. And on DraftKings scoring, wrestlers are a little bit more favored for ceiling scores than pure like stand up, knock you out type of fighters. Because if they don't get the first round knockout or at least the second round ground and pound, like their scores typically suck because they're not getting ground control or takedowns or anything. But like that's already reflected in the projection as well. Right. So I don't even have to care that much about it. So all I'm doing in MMA is saying, how often does the betting market say that this guy or girl finishes the fight inside the distance? And what is that number compared to the ownership? And that determines the total leverage of my lineup. So it doesn't mean, that's why you take a look here. It doesn't mean I don't have any McKinney. McKinney's still +2. I mean, he still has, if I take a look here, McKinney still has a 31% chance of winning inside the distance, an 18% chance of winning in the first round, and he's only 7,200. So yes, in my 3 hand-built lineups, I just fade the most over-owned underdog on the slate, but I could fit him in lineups that still work. Right. If I go to some of my let's see, go to my McKinney lineups, like what's my highest leverage McKinney lineup? Right. A lineup without Ankalaev and I Pereira, Roberson, Mirzakhanov, Moutinho, Dalt. Yeah, a pretty like no 9K fighters in here. Right. So my projection is my leverage score. So 6.35 on leverage. This is probably a unique lineup, even at 50,000 or under 5 dupes. Here's another one with both Maverick and JJ Aldrich, who was also barely owned. Mm-hmm. So I look through these. So I try to just build lineups that have the appropriate amount of leverage for the large field contest. And I aim primarily, not necessarily for uniques, but for under 5 dupes.
Right.
Uniques are a bonus for me. Under 5 dupes on a slate that pays out 100K to first, with all the other spots as well, it typically pays out around 40K. So, like, I don't mind all my lineups having the expected value of going to 40K. So, like, if I look on Results DB, like, you'll see my 150 lineups, I only had 29 uniques.
Mm-hmm.
But I had 113, I believe, or 118 under 5. So I'm fine with that. If I have 118 out of 150 under 5, to me, I'm good. I gear myself more towards that number than specifically getting unique. There are plenty of ways for me to have gotten unique. I could have left 1,000 on the table in a lot of lineups, but based on the odds of this slate with all these heavy favorites, typically those aren't the slates where lineups that have 1,000 on the table win. The win equity of those lineups go dramatically down, right? Because we have all these 9K favorites. Most likely, there's going to be 2 guys up here that put up 110, 120, and there's going to be a ton of these cheap underdogs that are just going to lose.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of a lineup that leaves that, like, oh, none of the 9K guys does well, and like 2 or 3 of the low underdogs also put up 100 points.
Mm-hmm.
That does happen every once in a blue moon, but it's unlikely. So to get unique, I'm going to have to build a lot more of those types of lineups. And I thought the win equity was too low in comparison to the probability of them being unique. So I'm like, I'll just try to make as many under 5 lineups, which by not playing as much Ankalaev, playing a ton of Maverick and Semmelsberger, and playing very little of McKinney, I knew I was going to get. So just going over my MMA thought process. You don't need to know anything about MMA,
right?
Really, to win at this. Like, you can't even like James. You pretty much can't even make a model. Do you even make a model for UFC?
I mean, I think that there are people that are trying right now that I respect and think that I think could do it, but I'm not sure how well you could do it. And the reason for that is mostly just that the data is really, really unreliable, right? Like, we know that the significant strikes data, like, if you were going to build a model, you have to be able to count significant strikes. You have to be able to have good, clean data that is reliable. And we just don't have reliable data for MMA.
Well, why is it not reliable?
Because it's subjective.
Right. I knew. I'm asking. I'm doing one of those. I asked the question and I already know the answer.
Yeah. It's subjective, and we see it all the time on Twitter, where like there's a serious disagreement in terms of who had the actual significant strike advantage and the numbers of significant strikes and everything like that. So if I'm going to build something, I want reliable data. It's something where if you build out a model and you trust the significant strikes data out there, you're just going to be wrong because it's subjective. It's completely subjective. And when you have coaches or when you have judges out there that are determining winners and stuff like that, that's another subjective thing. There's just so much subjectivity when it comes to the sport that building out a model for it is there's people out there that can do well, but I don't think there's people out there that can do significantly better than what the average person could do.
Well, also with MMA, you have a sample size, and you have a sample size and time period problem. So if, let's say, number one, you have to adjust also for competition. So let's say you have the stats like that, which are a little bit, there's subjectivity in there, and let's say a guy has only 4 fights in the UFC. Mm-hmm. in the past year, but before that he was in PFL for a year, mm-hmm. or on the regional scene where you barely may even get any stats, right? So, like, how do you judge? Like, if I told you this guy is 10-0, he has 4 wins in the UFC against low-level fighters on the Dana White Contender Series, something like that, and his 6 previous fights for that were against guys that had losing records. And his stats for that were 170 significant strikes and 4 knockdowns or something. It's like, well, you're not going to, what are you going to use that data for? He's facing like the 3rd ranked guy in the division now.
Right.
Like, and he's a $7,400 underdog. Like what do all those stats in the regional scene matter anymore? Right? Other than tell you what style fighter he is. But what do they matter? And the 4 fights in the UFC, you only have 4 fights worth of data. And then let's say you have a guy that you have 20 fights worth of data in the UFC. Well, what does the data from 7 years ago matter? Right? Compared to how he fights now. Right? I mean, Marlon Moraes was like what, 4 years ago was like the title, the number 1 guy for the title. Like if you counted his, like we had Edson Barboza last week. Imagine trying to, like Edson Barboza was a world beater 7 years ago. So if you're taking that data into account, like how do you adjust for the fact that he's lost the past 3 fights and he's pretty much washed up and he has no takedown defense? Like how, like that data doesn't matter that much. You could regress it as much as you can, but you only have so many fights. Imagine doing especially in a sport that's very binary. So picture golf. I compare it more to golf, maybe not baseball or basketball or anything like that. But imagine having data of a golfer for only 8 events. And the 8 events are over the past 3 years. And he hasn't been in a golf event for 4 months. Right. So it's not like you have like, oh, the past 20 weeks of events, right? No, you have 20 total events in golf of him playing golf in 8 years. And the past 4 events, the last time that he took the course was 4 to 6 months ago. Right? And the other 3 were for the 4 months previous to that. Like, how would you do a golf model based on that? You would have no clue what the hell's going on, right?
You couldn't do that. Yeah.
Right. But that's the main reason, James, where when I looked and I got all the scoring on DraftKings since they started UFC.
Mm.
And I got the betting lines, the closing betting lines of all the fighters. So inside the distance, round 1 and the winning odds of all the fighters going back to when they started.
Yeah.
And then all I did was compare. I originally did 90 points. And then I bumped it up to 100. And then once I did it to 100, I had some data scraping. I had some data problems. I had some missing data. I wasn't looking to be perfect, James, right? You know me, just directionally accurate.
Yep.
And when I saw, based on the data that I had, that to a 90-point score, obviously round 1 finishing was 1. Because it's impossible to get negative points. So you're going to score at least 90 in a first round finish. So that's why I didn't bother with 90. That's why I went to 100. So like at 100, round 1 is like 0.92 or something when I did it. This was over a year ago. And the inside the distance line was like 0.81. The money line doesn't matter that much. The money line was like 0.4.
Yeah.
Right. Most likely winning fighters typically score more than 100 points compared to losing fighters, but it doesn't say, right, whether or not the line's higher doesn't matter as much.
Right.
So once I saw that, I'm like, well, why do I even care about anything else? Like there's no significant stress. I can guarantee you, I didn't even have to look at it, that there's no other metric like strikes or takedowns or efficiency or anything like that would come anywhere close to 0.8. Right, because 0.8 is very high for correlation.
Yeah, super high.
Right, so that's why I built this. That's the origination of why I'm like, well, let me just make a spreadsheet where I just take those numbers and compare it to ownership, and it's like now I can build lineups, and that's it.
Go.
Like to me, this is not precise, but I guarantee you, it's really directionally accurate.
That's all it needs to be. I mean, I do the same thing with golf. And like you mentioned golf, and I do the same thing. I just take the Vegas odds or like the sportsbook odds. I use offshore. And I put together a way for us to measure, one, how the chances of players finishing as the top overall finisher, top 5, top 10, top 20, and top 5 is the best for GPPs because you need at least like 3 guys in the top 5 in order to win in a GPP. So we measure that against their salary and against their overall world golf ranking. And like, there you go. If you can have somebody who rates well, is a good golfer, has good chance to be a top 5 overall scorer, and is priced effectively, so not priced over their chances of being a top 5 overall scorer, then you can build good lineups with that. And like, you don't need to do that much more. You don't need all the different shot tracking data. You don't need putting data. There's so much of golf that one is sample size stuff and competition different stuff, where if a golfer has a number 1 finish, like they win a tournament against scrubs, right? And then they go into like the players or something, players tournament, and now they're facing the best of the best of the best. Like that number 1 finish over in this tournament does not matter literally at all. Like these guys are now up against significantly tougher competition. But if you can take the sportsbook aggregate data and put that together and find leverage based on their chances to actually finish the tournament at a high point, you don't need anything more than that. I think that there's a lot of sports that you don't actually have to know that much about the sport. Esports is another one where like you can use winning data, you can use Vegas data, and since it's so binary, if as long as you have winners, that's all that matters. So putting together models, people want to be. It's the difference between being accurate and being precise. What matters is being accurate. It doesn't matter if you're precise. What matters.
Well, hold on. I want to put in a caveat in there.
When you are building models that you do not have clean data, you want.
But I even want to add a little bit to that also.
Okay. All right,
that in overall, that being more precise only matters if everyone else is playing accurately. Is that a better, like?
Sure. Yeah.
If it came down to me on this model, if you want to call it a model, it's not a model. For me to be more precise on this, and like if I wasn't going to be profitable doing it this way, that means the field strength is so high that may not even be worth playing. That you're not even going to be able to beat the rake. So like that's why like directionally accurate beats most people, beats average players. Yeah. But at the highest level, the more and more precise you'd rather be. So if I was in a contest with the other top MMA DFS players, like being more precise will make a difference enough that it's worth me trying. Whether or not it's worth the rake is a different story. But when I look up in this MMA, in the large field MMA contest, James, there were 3,000 blank entries.
Oh my God.
Right. That's a lot. Right. And if I take a look at this, I could go here in Results DB and look at duplicates. Here are lineups that were duplicated. Here's one that was duplicated 226 times, including users that did it multiple times. Right. Here's a lineup that was duplicated 165 times. Here's a lineup that 104. Right. And they're very straightforward lineups. I take a look and I go, okay, I understand this lineup. I don't know why this lineup specifically, like Youssef was not like this lineup. I don't know why was duplicated 165 times. Just looking at the people in it.
Yeah.
But it was. But when you look at how many dupes these are, like 81, 78, 77. Like these are the lineups that you avoid. You avoid like the plague. This is where your edge comes from. People building, and we take a look, and they're all like 50K type of lineups, right? High ownership. Now, obviously, sometimes I make mistakes, and I get some of these lineups in my 150 build, but for the most part, I don't. So this is where the edge comes from. So it's like, do I need to be precise when people don't mind playing lineups that are going to be duplicated? I mean, look at the total. I try to avoid lineups that are duplicated like 20 plus times, right? I mean, I'm looking for under 5, but even 20 plus, look how many lineups are 20 plus.
Yeah.
And they make up so much of the field. Look, 226, if I add these all up, 226 plus 165, that's around 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. I mean, like we go down the line, just 20 plus dupes. We're talking about what? 2,000, maybe 3,000 lineups that are mega duped.
Yeah.
Out of 29, out of almost 30,000. Right? There are 8,061 unique lineups in this contest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can make them. So, like, this is where the edge is. This is why I say, like, I don't mind pushing my edges in MMA, even though most of these guys I don't even know what they look like. Right. I only know what they look like when okay, that's the guy that I have a lot of. Maybe that wasn't a good eye. Sometimes I look and I go, I can't believe I have a lot of that guy. And Devin's in the chat. Devin's like 3. Yeah, there was. Yeah, so I didn't check, but someone in Discord said, like, you download. I mean, obviously I could check. They said there were 3. Obviously because there was a pay-per-view slate.
Yeah.
So they do the satellites and stuff, and maybe they give away tickets or who knows. But there were 3,000 blank entries.
Yeah.
3,000 blank entries. That's 10% of the field.
That's insanity.
Right.
I mean, that's half the rake. Right.
So in this type of environment, James, I think directionally accurate is still pretty profitable.
Absolutely. I mean, you're showing that it is.
Right. Well, that's the whole that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was saying that precise matters less, you're right. It matters more the better the people are. The more accurate people are, the more precise you have to be in order to beat the accuracy. But for a lot of sports where you don't have reliable data, or you can't really model very well with the data that you have, I think that being accurate is more than enough, because that's really the best that you can do. When you have like NBA, being precise matters, right? Because people are accurate and precise in NBA. In soccer, I think being directionally accurate matters more than being precise.
Yes,
because
definitely.
You don't have reliable data. And nobody is building out super precise models for soccer because you just can't. For NFL, I think NFL is one of the reasons why it is such a good DFS sport, is because I think you can approach it both ways. Because even though the data is very good for NFL now, it's better than it used to be. I still think that it is subjective and unreliable enough in ways based on the event scoring that you can still kind of put together things in a way that does not have to be precise and still find success.
We have Alan Burns in the chat that putting the probably the most overrated, better way of putting it. I don't want to just call out straight out wrong, but it's wrong. Said he would look at course data for golf because the courses don't change much, and the golfers are playing the course more than the other golfers. Like, you'd have 10-year-old data, the course is the same, and you'd be in. I hope my competitors. I don't play PGA DFS, but I mean I used to for 2 years or whatever. Course history is don't even bother. Right? You do a PGA model, right?
I do.
Yeah, but you do it very similar to what I do in UFC, right? But back when I was playing PGA DFS, people saw it like they did. I remember there was one course, the Colonial, like Luke Donald did great on that course or whatever. Like, but what happens if he's bad now? Like, you can't go by like course history. At best, you're looking at something of a golfer from 52 weeks ago, right? And then a golfer from 104 weeks ago. Then the golfer from 5 years ago is not the same golfer as he is now. There are probably people in the players field that I could look and I go, oh, I remember when that guy was a $10,000 golfer. Like Ricky Fowler. What happened to that guy? Right. So am I going to use, Ricky Fowler did well 5 years ago on this course. Ricky Fowler was a better golfer 5 years ago, right? It has nothing to do with the course. He was just a better golfer. Yeah. Matt Kuchar. I don't know. All I know is there's some golfers now, and there are also golfers that I look at and I go, that guy used to be a $6,600 golfer. Why is he $9,800 this week? Because I didn't play for a while,
right?
But because they're better golfers now. So looking at like, how did so-and-so do 4 years ago on this course? Well, How did he do in general 4 years ago? He was a horrible golfer 4 years ago. So maybe he came in 116th place and shot 8 over par because he was just bad back then.
Yeah.
Maybe it has nothing to do with the course. He was just bad back then. And then you also have just general form in general, right? Form is more predictive than course history. A guy, you'd rather play a golfer. It's more correlative. I'm not saying that it is the most correlative. It is more correlative if a guy that is now coming up to a course that he's played the past 5 years and never made the cut, right? Never made the cut, got all 5 times, but is coming in on the best form. I'd weigh the form more than the course history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And when I did actually 2 years ago, I think I built out a PGA model that was actually like me trying to build a PGA model, not just using sportsbook information and course history. You would put it into the model and it would give you these guys that, and they get touted every single course. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's really good on this course. This guy's really good on this course.
Right. Oh, they're good at Pete Dye courses, right?
Yeah,
or something. And
like
people
that.
adjust for that.
Yeah.
And what happens the past 3 weeks? He's been shanking balls over the trees. I mean, like,
yeah. What
who
if
cares?
What if last year he had an injured back? And so he missed the cut, and so he was still rehabbing his back or something. And now this year he comes in. It's like, oh well, he missed the cut last year. He's never made a cut on this course. It doesn't matter. When you would put it into course history, the thing that mattered most when you were looking at PGA 2 years ago for me in that model specifically was recent form, and that was it.
Right.
It was recent form. It was a combination of recent form and how bad they have been putting, which sounds.
But putting is so variant that you almost can't even adjust for that.
No. But it is so variant in the same way that like a 3-point shooter is streaky. And most guys will have a putting like average that they have in their career. Most guys, they'll be like within 8 feet. They have like a 35% chance of making it or something across their career, right? And you can measure that in the same way that 3-point shooters who are streaky have like a 39% 3-point shot, right?
Right.
And if they're shooting badly, eventually, and I'm not saying that they are due, but we know that that oscillation happens where you can see where they're going up or they're going down. So with golfers, one of the main things people do in PGA Showdown is look, okay, how badly did they putt the day before and hoping for that bounce back. You can do the same thing tournament by tournament. If their form is really good and their putting has been bad, you can look at that regressed against their career putting averages, and you can actually find guys who should be putting better and end up finding guys who do well on the next course. So it's recent form and how bad they've been putting and hoping for a regression from their putting to their career averages. That was what I found was best in my model 2 years ago.
Right. Well, no, but that makes sense. That's how I played PGA Showdown.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's essentially
tournament. You can do the same thing tournament to tournament, and I don't know why.
But that's more correlative than looking into anything else. I mean, sometimes you just find the stuff that, just like in UFC, in MMA, where people are going. So when Canetti won, someone told me that was his first knockout since 2012. Okay. The guy's 42 years old. So essentially, I played a 42-year-old dude that hasn't had a knockout in 10 years. And he got a first-round knockout. That's why someone said, oh, you're so lucky. It's like, if he was that lucky, why was his round one finishing odds at plus 650?
Right.
He was 13%. That was one of the, if you take a look at this sheet, that's one of the lower numbers on this sheet. It's not like I had him like, oh, a high or anything. But like people think 13 plus 650 means it never happens. Mm-hmm. Right? So like it's comparing that versus the ownership. If you told me Guido Canetti was 25% owned yesterday or it's on Saturday, I would have barely had him.
Right.
So it's not a matter of what I think is going to happen. It's just comparing the chances of something versus the ownership. And that's it. Then Devin's in the chat. Devin, oh, he's playing MMA. As you should. It's not complicated. I show you. I mean, dude, it's my second most James, it's now my second most profitable sport.
And you've been playing for like 2 years?
Less than 2, a little less than 2 years, right?
You should be playing it. Yeah. We should
right. I've made more in MMA than I've been in soccer, and I've been playing soccer for 6.5 years. But of course, there's no huge contest, and you can't make 100K in one shot in soccer. Right. So I got NBA and then MMA and then soccer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, but I mean, like, if you want to be competitive in MMA, like this will take you, even if you didn't want to make a sheet like I'm making like this. If you just wanted to go, let me go to any sports book. It's all relative. So like, it doesn't matter. Go to DK Sportsbook, go to BetMGM, go to whatever. I use an offshore sports book, but that accepts a little bit more sharp money. So my lines are a little bit more precise, but just go and look at the inside the distance lines on the fighters. Yeah. That's it. And then change that number into an implied probability. And there are converters. You could just Google that. Odds converter, probability converter. And you could even want to do it that way. You can put it into Excel, or you can just do it on the website. And then convert, like Sadiq Youssef plus 190 is 34%. How much will he be owned? Right? You go to our ownership. Our ownership says 23% owned. So you go, okay, what's 34 divided by 23? And then that's a number. And then you just do that with every fighter. And then say, well, what fighters have higher numbers than others? Those are the ones that provide you with more relative value. And there you go. And then build lineups, right? And you'll have guys that project high and are still high owned. You'll have sometimes where, oh, this guy's going to be 55% owned, yet but his inside the distance line is 62%. So you're like, oh, he's actually under-owned. Then you have underdogs where it's like, well, he's the best of the bunch, Terrence McKinney, but he's way over-owned, right? So you just compare, if you just did that. I mean, obviously I'm weighing in a couple of other things, some projection stuff, right? I'm weighing the inside the distance round one and win probability slightly differently, right? I'm coming up with my own rating number, which I can't give you the exact formula because then you'll start making my exact lineup. So that's like, at least if you did it this way, your lineup will look very similar to mine, but maybe not exactly mine, right? But maybe not exactly mine. So if you just did that, you could absolutely be competitive in MMA DFS. That's it. I mean, if you want to make one lineup, 3 lineups, 20 lineups, 150, like there you go. You don't have to know anything. Just understand also that you're going to get burned. You're going to lose 90% of the time. That's that. When it comes to DFS, I think that's the hardest thing for people for GPP players especially, to judge against.
Yeah. Psychologically,
I understand, right? I understand from an average person's perspective. I played poker for a long time, so I'm hardened to. Oh, I have a 98% chance of winning this hand. Oops, I lost. Right? 2% chance, up, 1 outer. Oops. I've seen that enough, right? So, like, to say, like, okay, you could play perfectly and lose 9 out of 10 slates seems counterintuitive to most people. But like I said, you're not looking for the most probable. You're trying to be the most profitable. I made $35,000 on Saturday after losing every MMA slate. I don't think I've profited on an MMA slate. Let me tell. I'm going to bring up RotoTracker. I want to see this. Okay. So I'm going to go to graphs, site, sport, MMA. Okay. So here's my MMA graph. Okay. So these were profitable slates. That was a profitable slate. My last profitable slate in MMA was November 20th. Okay. Since then I've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That was a 10th slate since then, because obviously there was a month break between middle of December and January.
Right.
There's no MMA. So I lost 9 slates in a row where I lost money. Right? And take a look at my entire graph. Right? This one says 51 days played. Okay? 51 days played, $122,000 in profit. Okay, so 51 slates I've played over the past, since last, whatever, June. How many of those did I win? Did I profit in? Let's see, 1. Is that a profit? No, that was a loss. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 51 slates. I've won 10. I've profited in 10 of them. And out of the 10 that I profited in, I won a lot in 2. Or 3, technically. This is 1 also. So I've won a good amount.
Yeah.
A hefty amount in 3 of them. So 10 out of 51 is what? That's 19%. So I've only profited in 19% of the slates that I played. And out of those slates, I've only won decently 3 out of 51. So that's 5.8% of the time. Right? So 95% of the time, I'm not, if I'm even profiting, it's almost a loss in and of itself. It's not a big enough win to cover anything.
Yeah.
So 94% of the time, I'm losing.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I'm up. My ROI is 80%.
There you go. Welcome to DFS.
Welcome to DFS. I mean, but psychologically, for most people, like picture this red streak over here. Picture it. They go like this, and they go, "Am I playing well? Am I running bad?" You could be playing well, and your graph could look just like this. The thing is that I tweaked. I built. Where on this graph do you think I built this spreadsheet? I built the spreadsheet right here.
Yeah. And then turned around.
But I was essentially doing that type of process. Like I was trying to do that before.
Yeah.
But it just was too tough. I was just like, let me put it into Excel spreadsheet. But during this time, even after this, I mean, look at all of this. This is all downswing, 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 downswing. I mean, look, 120 down to 87. So what's 120 down to 87?
At 33.
33.
Yeah.
Which means the 35 that I won yesterday, pretty much like just eliminated that entire downswing.
There you go.
Welcome to DFS. I mean, this is pretty much what I tell them when people are like, oh, I'm losing 90% of the time. I'm like, welcome to DFS. That's normal.
Yep. That's all.
But I'm gonna win every day in Madden Sims though.
I'm almost done with the model.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna tell me that you forgot about it.
Nope. Almost done with it.
Okay.
I finally found a way to pull in all of the data at once, which was really the biggest. Like it was possible for me to go in and find individual players and like do that kind of thing, but that would have made the process completely just pointless for me. I wouldn't have done that. But now I have a list of every single team being pulled in, and then I have a master list, and then I have the Draftkings sheet being pulled in, and I have ratings, and I have averages, and I have all that stuff. So almost done with it. Probably done with it by the end of the day. And then all I have to do is do a little bit of back testing and take a look at things. I'm going to enter a contest today to see how much we have to correlate, because I don't know if, like, obviously it makes sense.
Well, I mean, if we're playing cash games, I don't care that much.
No. But I mean, I want to see if it matters as much as it does in real life football, which of course intuitively it does, but like we're going into an unknown frontier here. So might as well back test it a little bit. And but yeah, it's almost done. I just have to figure out the right formula to put things together to get the projections how I want them, and then we're gonna run some Madden Sims here, Jordan. We're gonna run them.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll pick that up at paydrdfs.com. Are you gonna put it up, or is this gonna be between us?
I will put it up next week after you and I test some things. So I'll give it to you first so that I can make sure that like it's not trash. And then as soon as we know, because it will be very, very good, I'll put it up on the site. So I'll have Madden Sim projections on the site. And then, people can get them at paydirdfs.com. I am running a promo right now because baseball's back, which we didn't even talk about today. And you and I love baseball, but
yeah, we'll have time. Well, it's April 7th. We'll have plenty of time.
Anyway, yeah, baseball's back. So I'm running a promo on the site. If you enter the code DoubleDong, all caps, checkout, and you'll get $10 off the first month. So paydirdfs.com, and you can find me on Twitter at paydirt_DFS. And yeah, that's all.
And if you want to learn more concepts like we've talked about today, me and James, 15 hours long. It's like a seminar, structured education. You don't have to go back to all of these past episodes and watch this 500 hours worth of the show. You go to theoryofdfs.com, how to think like a professional DFS player, the theory of daily fantasy sports, game theory that applies to every sport. We have all these chapters here. Here's a table of contents. You can go pick it up. And you can MMA. That's why people in the chat are like, "Oh, are we going to talk about NBA or anything?" Well, it's a 9-10 game slate with 1,700 back-to-back. So who knows what happens today in NBA? But the concepts apply to playing DFS in any sport. Everything we've talked about applies to NBA as well, right? The concepts are still the same. What you're trying to do in daily fantasy sports. So go to theoryofdfs.com. Give those thummy thumbs on your way out the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Grinders Live, NBA. If you want the NBA stuff, Grinders Live, 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock, 4:45, something like that. They change the schedule around. I don't know when you'll see the thumbnail. You'll hit the notification bell and you'll know when they go live. And then crunch time for premium members. It should be it's going to be it's tonight on NBA. I expect stupidity, and I'm probably going to play it anyway because I'm stupid. Because why not? Why not? There's 4 late games. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't want. It's this slate, right? Because look, most of the games are late. I mean, like it's a one game at 7, 2 at 7:30, 1 at 8, 1 at 8:30, and then a 10, 10, 10, 10:30. Late swap city. If you're not willing to late swap, don't play today. But they'll be covering it later here on RotoGrinders. Premium, RotoGrinders Premium, feel free to sign up for that. I'm always in the Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Answering your DFS strategy questions, as always, on the DFS pregame show on rotogrinders.com.